Right now, Emma and I are going to demonstrate some simple techniques using the mirror and optical illusions. Emma will look into the mirror and see the reflection of her left hand and her left leg. She knows cognitively that it's her left hand and her left leg in the mirror. That means her thinking mind knows that. However, the rest of her mind knows that it's her right hand and right leg in the mirror. So in other words, you have part of her mind thinking one thing and the rest of her mind, which is actually far vaster, believing something else. And it's the vaster part that we're interested in. So as soon as Emma looks into the mirror and say she begins to move her left thumb, but she's seeing the reflection, so a big part of her nervous system, her brain, is perceiving her right thumb moving. And that means the left hemisphere of her brain, which perceives and controls her right thumb, is now being triggered. It's now being stimulated. New neural pathways are being created instantaneously. So we'll take an example that Emma has carpal tunnel syndrome, and she has a lot of pain in her right hand and her right wrist. Normally, if she were to move her right thumb, it causes her pain. But normally means habitually, habitual perception. As soon as she moves and she looks into the mirror, we're triggering something that's non-habitual, and that means it's not linked to the usual connections with the pain creation and recreation in the brain. By the way, a lot of pain is the creation and recreation within the brain and not necessarily where damage has occurred. Another thing that happens is, because it's non-habitual, muscle tone immediately changes, which means that places that were habitually overly tight, overly short muscles, chronically short muscles begin to release, they begin to lengthen, where they were constricting. They were constricting not only themselves, but they're constricting all the blood vessels, all the lymph, all the tissue beneath them. And in the process of constricting, they're also creating more lactic acid. So that begins to change in a very beneficial way.
So what if I'm looking at my left hand in the mirror, but I feel like on some level I really know that it's my left hand instead of my right hand?
So it doesn't matter, because the rest of your mind still perceives it as your right hand. However, we can begin to take the thinking mind further out of the equation by overloading it. And I'm going to borrow a couple of ideas, concepts from Keith Johnstone and Milton Erickson and Moshe Feldenkrais. The idea of overloading the thinking mind with tasks so that it no longer thinks about the skepticism that it has, you could say.
Okay.
Right? So here's a task we give Emma. Emma, move your left knee, or move your knee toward the mirror and away from the mirror. And I don't even have to say left and right. Sometimes it helps not to say that. She already knows what it is.
So I'm doing this as I'm moving my thumb?
As you're moving your thumb, move the knee back and forth, and move it away slow enough so you can feel when the movement becomes less smooth, where it's not smooth. The knee will kind of skip a step here and there.
Yeah, it's like little jerks almost.
Now immediately, that takes a lot of attention, and the thinking mind is very occupied at this moment. If I want to occupy it even more, I can say, Emma, take 5 counts to reach one side and 5 counts to come back. So her thinking mind now has to count as well.
It's funny because when I, like the only way I can do that right now is to count in time with my thumb moving.
And to make that even more challenging, then I'll say, move the thumb at a different count, slower, at a slower count.
Okay.
And so the thinking mind is very occupied right now. In a sense, the thinking mind is letting go, which frees it up. We overload the thinking mind, and it actually helps to free up the whole mind. And what we do is we don't confront the thinking mind head on. We accept its skepticism, and then we say, okay, just do this task. We occupy the thinking mind with this task. Then we add another task, and then we may add a third task, and it's so busy with all the tasks that it forgets it's supposed to be skeptical, and that actually frees up the mind.
Interesting.
As an Aikido teacher once said, your mind can't freak out if it's interested in something. And what he meant was that if your mind is focused on doing one thing, it can't be focused on having an anxiety attack. And more now, new neural pathways are being created, ones that are not tied to the old habitual pain patterns and the old habitual muscle tone patterns and muscular tension patterns. We are actually improving strength, coordination, and decreasing tension at the same time, and decreasing pain, assuming that Emma has some kind of chronic pain issue with her right hand. Now this incidentally affects not just the right hand, but the whole right side of the body, because when there's a change, it's a hemispheric change, and that means even though Emma's only moving part of her body, so to speak, the whole left hemisphere of her brain is affected, and that means even her right eye rather, which is controlled and governed largely by the left hemisphere of the brain, that is affected as well. The starting position will be identical. That's more useful. That's more useful to trick the mind. And so I've worked with stroke recoveries, and let's say for now Emma is a stroke recovery and she has spasticity in the right side of her body. Say her hand is like this, so go ahead and do that. And that means spasticity in this case means that all the flexors are contracting all the time quite violently. So what we would do is we would have the left hand, I'd have her left hand imitate the right hand, so I'll have you do that. And this would be the starting position. With this as a starting position, it's easier, oops, are you okay? Mm-hmm. It's easier to trick the mind because we're starting in the same place. And then we can begin from there to just slowly maybe open the index finger slowly, and close it. And immediately we're starting to release the spasticity in the right hand without having to do anything with the right hand.